Hi, I'm glad you could join me in my study today. In discussing the doctrine of the atonement, theologians are fond of emphasizing the diversity of the metaphors and motifs that the New Testament uses in describing the death of Christ for our sins. But while this is true, it seems to me that there is one motif that predominates above all others, and that is the motif of Christ's death as a sacrificial offering to God for our sins. The book of Hebrews, for example, is devoted entirely to an extended meditation on the death of Christ as a sacrifice for our sins and on Christ as the high priest who offers himself as the final and ultimate sacrifice for our sins. Paul also speaks of Christ's death in terms of a sacrificial offering to God and calls Christ our Paschal Lamb. Now, was this motif of Christ's death as a sacrifice to God a sort of rationalization of the fact that Jesus the Messiah had been crucified, in some sense needed to be made ex post facto out of his death? Not at all, because this motif is rooted in the teaching and conception of Jesus himself. At his Last Supper, Jesus, in celebrating the Passover, picked Passover time as the time when he would be delivered up to death, and he provoked the events that led up to his death. And as he celebrated the Last Supper, the Passover, with the disciples, he used the words, "This is the new covenant in my blood," recalling the words of the Mosaic covenant in Leviticus when the Mosaic covenant was instituted in blood. So Jesus himself thought of his impending death as a sacrificial offering to God, which would be made at the time of the Passover feast.